Essentially, these are lawsuits which really are brought with no intent for success, but rather the primary goal is to deplete the target in the litigation's ability to defend, to deplete their resources, and to just tie them up in court in an effort to really squash their ability to exercise their rights of free speech. Individuals and organizations are often faced with SLAPP suits, and after speaking to numerous organizations and folks throughout Pennsylvania, we realized that these are lawsuits that are brought by organizations with very, very deep pockets, with the intention to try to force those folks that, with a exercise of their own free speech, were exercising and advocating for issues that they believe in, and then trying to have them literally prevented from bringing these issues and bringing their advocacy to the general public. Again, like I said, my bill, Senate Bill 95, would put an end to this abuse, not only of the right to free speech, but specifically would bring an end to what we all know are frivolous lawsuits. Many of people watching and folks here, I know Jeff and others, would remember the old Civic Association. That was a civic association with a long history here in Philadelphia, of about 40 years, I believe, and they were forced to close their doors a few years ago, specifically because they had been sued so many times with these frivolous SLAPP suits that it got to the point where they were unable to obtain insurance coverage for themselves and for their civic. And that's really what happens here, is that the perpetrators of these suits, the initiators of these suits, understand that the more they file, it will deplete their resources and in many cases leave these civic associations and those members without any ability for insurance coverage, and leaving them literally alone and unable to defend themselves. So what we saw is that there is a need right now more than ever, and not just in Philadelphia. I want to stress that what we have learned, and we have learned through significant committee meetings and all around Pennsylvania. We have a co-sponsor of this suit from York, a good friend of mine, Representative Bizzarro, who has actually Erie, where he's from, and has advocated for this suit statewide for this legislation. So, we have been able to move Senate Bill 95 through the Senate, not once but on 2 occasions, and you can imagine the difficulty of doing that in a body where you have only 16 Democratic members out of 50. But that shows you the wide base of support that this legislation has received in the Senate, and the echoing of how much the state really wants this type of law on the books.
And in the last 2 years, we have been the subject of 2 SLAPP suits. The most recent one was filed by a developer, Brian O'Neill, and he, along with his corporate counterparts, O'Neill Developers and Constitution Drive Partners, filed a lawsuit in the Chester County Court of Common Pleas against the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, against myself in my role as the Delaware Riverkeeper, against a private citizen, Carla Zambelli, and also included a provision in the filing that said that he intended to include up to 10 additional residents as defendants in this SLAPP suit, putting everybody on notice in the community, challenging this developer that they were at risk of being added to this lawsuit if they spoke up and they spoke out. The suit made false claims of defamation, interference with business operations, and claims that there was a conspiracy against Mr. O'Neill and his corporate counterparts because of our vocal opposition to his development proposal for what is known as the Bishop Tube site. They, in their court filing, they wanted the court to mandate that we pay them $50,000 plus attorney's fees, and that punitive damages be imposed by the courts. Now, Brian O'Neill and his development counterparts filed this suit because of our opposition to his proposal to develop a highly contaminated brownfield site located in East Whiteland Township, Chester County. He wants to develop the site with over 200 townhomes after only a partial remediation takes place of a portion of that site, just the what are called the unsaturated soils, the upper level of the grounds along that site. This is a site that's highly contaminated with trichloroethylene, otherwise known as TCE. TCE is a known human carcinogen. It causes several kinds of cancer, including kidney cancer, liver cancer, malignant lymphoma. The community is opposed because of concerns about the impacts that the proposed development will have on the full cleanup of the site, and also because of concerns that, as I said, what Mr. O'Neill is proposing is just a partial remediation of the site, still leaving groundwater contaminated at very high levels, and actually bringing over 200 new residents, families to the site, despite this ongoing contamination deep under the ground. And the community believes it's wrong. It's wrong for the current community, and it's wrong for that future community that might purchase those homes. Brian O'Neill brought his lawsuit for one reason and one reason only, and that was to scare and bully the East Whiteland community into silence. But thankfully, in a decision recently issued by Judge Summers, a very wise judge, the case was recently dismissed. And this is what Judge Summers said, and I quote, "This is what we call," speaking about what the Delaware Riverkeeper Network and I and the residents were saying, "this is what we call constitutionally protected free speech under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution and the Pennsylvania Constitution, and that the Delaware Riverkeeper Network is immune from plaintiffs' tort claims." And the case was dismissed. Now, despite the fact that this case was dismissed, and despite the fact that we were fully vindicated in what we were doing and how we were doing it, it cost the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, a nonprofit organization to whom people donate their hard-earned dollars in order to protect the environment and to protect communities, it cost us over $10,200.
This intrusion on our civil rights has been difficult for myself and many of my neighbors. People don't know what they can and cannot say at community meetings with our township officials. People are silenced when they become aware that the representatives of the developer are sitting behind them and writing down what is said. And people stop attending meetings because they fear retribution and because they feel powerless. My husband and I have gone to meetings, we have asked questions, and we have let our officials know what we want for our community.
My organization buys directors and officers insurance to protect me and my fellow civic leaders from economic harm that could come about because of our civic role. That insurance costs roughly $1,500 to $2,000 a year. Fortunately, my organization can afford it. Lots of others cannot. So many organizations in this city that are playing this role are not covered by insurance. My organization, the Crosstown Coalition, is working to try and find a citywide solution. We've been working with Councilman Squilla and others to try and make that happen. But these SLAPP lawsuits, once you get a claim filed against you, as Maya very graphically pointed out, even if you're right and vindicated, you still have to pay thousands, tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. Your insurance company pays that, but if you're a little organization, that insurance company drops you like a hot potato the next year because you have no longer met their profit and loss needs.
I'm not saying people do not have the right to sue. All we're saying is that people who do sue for frivolous reasons, or just because somebody doesn't agree with them or believe they don't have standing, we think they should be protected. And yes, it does sound like a small amount of money to be protected by D&O insurance. But the problem is not the cost of that insurance, but then once you are sued, you're then unable to then get that insurance. So therefore you leave yourself open, and as personally, your family, these are all volunteer positions. And as you can hear, this is just not a Philadelphia issue. This is a statewide issue, this is a national-wide issue. And people who are volunteering their time to help promote the city, to help protect their communities, are the ones who are at risk. To me, it's a no-brainer, working with Senator Farnese, who had the foresight to put this legislation forward, only enables us to protect the citizens of our communities.